Chapter 53, Thoughts. Had Charon not been toying with us for the most part, and Eleanor sacrificing her lifespan to help, the three of us would have died since. Bowing his head in guilt and sorrow, Damien's emotions of loss and confusion resonated in the room. And feeling this, the girls who had once been cheerfully rushing to meet him stopped. Truth be told, although they tried their best not to show it, the three of them were going through all kinds of internal pain and thoughts. Lyra, having watched hundreds, if not thousands, of her elf brethren die in this war. Isabel being severely injured, and watching her young master also get injured once again, questioned her usefulness. And Leona, having been told before this by the doctors that she might never be able to wield a sword again, was internally broken. All her life, even before being a slave, as a lion tribe beast man, all she knew how to do was fight. Now that important part of her was gone forever. Silence. For a while, silence dominated the room as neither side had anything to say. At least that was until Lyra finally acted. Bang! Mustering up all her strength, she managed to shoot a mana arrow directly over Damien's head. "Shut up, how dare you apologize?" Lowering her head, tears welled up in her eyes. "This was all my fault. If I hadn't dragged you all into this, none of you would be this injured. Leona, just look at yourself. After being freed from slavery, you haven't even spent a month before being in a worse condition. And you, Damien and Isabel, after I knew that your father couldn't come, I should never have taken you with me. Now, even if we won, but at what cost? Even if the Twilight Church is gone, but the whole reason we went was for the slave traders attacking the elves. What happened here was a surprise." Remembering the broken carriages and human corpses they saw on the way here, Lyra figured it was probably because the Twilight Church had already gotten to them. Arg! Damn humans, damn Twilight Church, damn demon worshippers. Recalling the lifeless bodies of her brethren being cleaned up all around the capital, fist clenched, tears falling from her eyes. "So how dare you apologize? It's not your fault, it's mine, it's theirs, it's the world." Looking at the downcast Damien with tears in her eyes, it finally came to her mind that this was a 12-year-old kid. Although sometimes he was cold, calculating, and mysterious, other times he was cheerful, proud, and fun. However, now all this was gone. Like a child who had done something wrong, Damien's head hung down, unable to lift it under the sheer amount of guilt. "Yes, young master, don't feel bad. Where is the young master who promised to change the world with me back when we left the Voss house? The young master who swore to fight against the void demon god, save his family and be the strongest? Are you throwing everything away now just because of a few losses?" Shouting at Damien, Isabel couldn't tell if she was shouting at Damien or herself. With her words ridden in emotion, she struggled to control herself as, at some points, flames had appeared over her hands, burning her bandages, and her horns were tearing through them. Leona, also, as if not to be left behind, seeing both of them like this, also voiced her thoughts. Although the youngest to join the group, she felt her connection to Damien might be no less than Isabel's. Struggling to wear a smile, similar to the others, with tears in her eyes, she began to pour out her heart. "Young lord, do not be sad. Leona thinks everything is fine," she smiled. "We saved the elves, we beat that big bone guy, we won. So why is everyone sad? Haha, shouldn't we celebrate?" Not talking about her own crippling injuries, Leona spoke, genuinely happy that her young lord's plan had succeeded. He was the one who freed her from that hell-like place at the slave fortress. He was currently her guiding light, and now such a guiding light had completed his goal. Did it matter if she was crippled? The only thing that made her sad was that, after this, she most likely wouldn't be able to follow him or help him anymore. Thinking of this, her eyes suddenly turned red. In an instant, the atmosphere of the room became worse as no one knew what to say. They were all confused. Should they be happy? Should they be sad? Should they be angry? Lost in thought, they didn't know what to do, and their leader, who should have said something, was also currently in doubt. Fortunately, just as all four of them were at a loss for words, a familiar and unfamiliar-looking elf made her way into the room. "Oh, it seems like all four of you are awake. However, the mood doesn't seem to be so good." Walking into the room, her blonde hair now gray from the loss of lifespan, her face that was once perfect, had some wrinkles here and there. Eleanor, with her now gray eyes, made her way into the room with a smile on her face. Looking at the four of them, she knew that this was probably their first major battle. In this fight, they had lost a lot, and it was probably their first time experiencing such. In a way, their reactions now reminded her of her younger days, when she first began adventuring. Back then, a few times she had wanted to give up, even end her own life in the face of some threats. However, it's because she didn't do that she can be here today as the Queen of Elves. Knowing this, she decided to help them out. "All four of you take a seat. I want to tell you a story," she said. Not giving them a chance to react, she instantly conjured up a wooden bench, chair, and sat down on it. A long time ago, there was once a hopeless little elf. A long time ago, there was once a hopeless little elf. Unlike other elves, she was special. Unlike the others, she was born directly from the world tree, a miracle which had not happened for hundreds of years. A high elf, if you would, the strongest form of the elf race. When she was born, the beasts of the elf forest bowed down, plants grew, and the sick were healed. The very world seemed to be in joy, announcing that she was born. Saying this, a strong melancholy flashed through her eyes as she remembered the past. As she spoke, the surrounding nature mana spurred by her emotions began to fluctuate, unknowingly drawing Damien and the others into her words. However, just as the story was seemingly all smiles, it quickly took a dark turn. With a wry smile, Eleanor continued to speak. "Hearing this, I'm sure some of you might think this is a good thing. For the elves, having such a person born in their family would mean their opportunity to rise had come once more. Unfortunately, potential without power to protect it is ultimately more of a liability than a blessing," she said, a hint of guilt flashing through her eyes. "Back then, the elf queen of the past, although also seventh order, was much weaker than me. However, despite that, in the face of the prying eyes of various forces trying to kidnap, research, and enslave such a genius, she remains unwilling. Despite being weak, she possessed an unusual ability to merge with the world tree. With that, she was invincible as long as she remained in the firm elf forest. And other forces, knowing this, dare not invade the elves." Hearing this, everyone was shocked. People who had just participated in this war knew what the world tree meant. It was the major source of life mana in the world of Elias, and it also maintained the barrier they had against the outside world. To merge with such a great tree, not only would that person have unlimited mana and regeneration abilities, but their every move would be akin to a walking natural disaster. Damien even wondered if the world tree was a god-level tree. Unfortunately, his knowledge regarding gods was too lacking to make any accurate judgments. As for Lyra, at only 18 years old, she hadn't heard any of these secrets before, although she knew that the elf queen was called the greatest talent in 100 years, but that was it. A high elf, I thought those were myths, to think the queen was one of them. Shocked by Eleanor's words, Lyra's thoughts began to spin as she wondered what could have happened that led to the current state of the elves, where they were attacked and captured without care. Auntie Eleanor, what happened? If she was so strong and the elf clan had such a genius, then what happened? If she were an even greater genius than the current elf queen, doesn't that mean that the current elf empire is meant to be stronger? Also confused, Leona on the side asked, so engrossed that she subconsciously ignored her aching body. Fortunately, Eleanor didn't keep them waiting long, as she soon told them why. Indeed, the elf empire should have been stronger than ever. Unfortunately, fate had other plans. At the gate of 10, she was already a fifth-order mage who could leapfrog in battles. The spirits and elements were always surrounding her, protecting and strengthening her. She was even rumored to be able to break through 7th Order before 30, 8th Order before 40, and 9th Order before 100. With the path of demigods still possible for her. Pausing slightly, the surrounding mana suddenly surged. However, none of that happened. At age 16, desperate to see the outside world and prove that she didn't need attention, she left the elf forest. After which, she met like-minded people who joined her in roaming the world. A stupid dwarf who drank all day and night. A human who, although powered by the shadows, brought light all around him with his laughter. A woman who deceived all those who came near her, getting trapped in her most, and a man whose fists resounded through every battlefield. In a trance as she spoke, Damien and the others seemed to see a group of people with smiles on their faces, sitting by a campfire, laughing and singing about their adventures. A truly warming picture. However, everything soon changed. At the angle of 18, just before I came of age according to human standards, it happened. Although I don't know how. But on that day, I decided to go back to the elf forest and see my family and the queen once more. As we elves, we have a certain ritual we do to the goddess of life that day. Unfortunately, it seemed that someone had leaked my travel path, and I was intercepted. 8 orders from the human race intercepted my path, blocking me and making me unable to return. Helpless and alone, despite my struggle, I wasn't able to escape. The surrounding space was sealed, so I couldn't contact anyone, and despite my overwhelming talent, I soon failed. Realizing this, I already knew my fate. Perhaps I would be enslaved and used for their research purposes regardless of my will. Or I would be made to bear their children to gain more talents. Either way, I knew that my life was not over. Saying this, the queen, who had been calm all this while, suddenly began to get angry. Her eyes narrowed and the air suddenly felt heavy. However, what really made me despair was what I heard next. One of the humans who captured me suddenly spoke. He uttered a sentence which I will never forget. The information was correct. The elf has been captured. Now proceed with the plan and lure the elf queen outside the forest. Yes, they plan to use me to get to the elf queen. Yes, they plan to use me to get to the elf queen. Not wanting to relive what happened, Eleanor, with a hint of pain in her eyes, continued speaking. As for what happened next, I'm sure you can guess. Ultimately, this was what led to the downfall of the former queen. To rescue me, she sacrificed herself and summoned the avatar of the goddess of life to fight in her body. Although doing so almost caused a divine war in the heavens and burnt her soul, as she was unable to withstand such a power. But since that day, the goddess of life has not responded to any of our calls. The elf queen did not pass down the method of merging with the world tree. Losing the queen and our biggest backer, it's not an exaggeration to say that I accelerated the downfall of the elf empire. In grief, I became suicidal. I wanted to leave my adventure friends and go back to the elf empire. Slightly smiling, she motioned, suddenly relaxed. And that was when I met him. My daughter's father, although no longer with us, was my guiding light back then. He stopped me from ending my life when I was lost in doubt. He told that death was the cowardly way out. Only by getting stronger and righting your wrongs can one truly atone. Knowing that, I decided to dedicate my life to the elf empire, determined to revitalize them to our once glorious nation. Unfortunately, Those human bastards seem to have done something to me, stopping me from breaking through. Ever since I escaped from there seemed to be something blocking me from breaking through, as if I dared break through, my soul would collapse on the spot. Casually saying something that shocked the room, Eleanor continued speaking as she reached the end of your story. Anyway, I just want to let you know that I understand that experiencing a war like this, you're filled with all kinds of emotion. Loss and shock. Perhaps even wondering, what if I did something different? What if I were stronger? What if I planned things differently? She paused. Unfortunately, you can go back in time. In this world, I doubt even the strongest gods can fight against the river of time. What you can do now is try to aim for a better future. So don't falter because of this, stand up stronger. You four, regardless of whether you want to or not, are going to be in the center of the new era. I don't know if you felt it, but a new era is already beginning. Those hidden forces and cults that had been hidden for years have begun to move. Even this attack from the Twilight Church, I doubt it will be the last. I have reason to suspect that the whole world would soon be engulfed in a giant war. So get stronger, you all, and don't fall here. Giving her words, Eleanor stood up, leaving as quickly as she came. She had already said her thoughts. Now she needed them to process her words. Silence. And just as she had predicted, as soon as she left, the room was instantly brought into an awkward silence. Although they knew what Eleanor said was true, things were always easier said than done. If they wanted to, none of them wanted to feel the way they currently felt. Unfortunately, facing a seventh order at that stage, it was already a miracle their mind weren't broken, even though they survived. Sigh. It seems like everyone has a lot on their mind. Don't worry about me, you three go rest. Obviously, nothing is going to come from saying anything now, so why don't we go back to our rooms and think back on it? After that, let's eat here in like an hour and voice our thoughts. How does that sound? Damien asked. At this point, he felt a period of self-reflection was the best move. And Lyra, Isabel and Leona, hearing this, did not argue. Rather than giving Damien one last deep look, they each whispered an okay and left the room. A sight that made Damien just sigh. However, just before he could begin his own self-reflection, his long-since silent system finally spoke up. Detecting the host is awake. Detecting the host's current state is currently in critical condition. Excess use of unstable mana and aura has created cracks in the host's soul. Aura core is severely damaged. Mana core is severely damaged. Recommended action: use points to perform a full restoration. Looking at all the prompts, Damien suddenly realized that in the heat of battle and fighting, he had missed a lot of things. If I remember correctly, I got 1000 DP for making sure the Elf Queen's daughter was born, contributing to the plot. However, I spent it all editing, performing shadow step, and a full heal. Where are the points the system is asking to spend from? Thinking of this, Damien instantly scrolled up on his system logs, and what she saw next left him completely shaken. System alert: 12th Demon General defeated. You have altered the course of the Great War. Calculating reward. Reward the host with 10,000 DP. What? 10,000? Looking at the amount, Damien could hardly contain himself. 10,000 DP. This was an amount he had never seen in all his years since coming to this world. Considering the nature of the battle, he also felt it was warranted. Perhaps even on the small side. However, at this moment, he didn't have the mind or patience to think of anything else. Looking at the huge amount, there was only one thought in his mind. A thought that its only possibility of becoming reality came through this sudden change. Taking a deep breath, Damien spoke his mind. System, how much DP does it take to heal Lyra, Leona, and Isabel? Yes, rather than healing himself, He was going to heal 3 of them first. System: how much DP does it take to heal Lyra, Leona, and Isabel? Looking at his 10,000 DP, Damien inwardly made a decision. Even if he had to spend everything, he would make sure they were all right, especially Leona, who currently had no hope of wielding mana in the future. A future powerhouse, such as herself, had no business stopping here. At times like this, I wonder, am I really a villain? At times like this, a villain would have properly prioritized his own injuries. Cough, cough, asterisk. Coughing up a clot of blood, Damien, having made up his mind, focused on the system. Detecting the current state of characters Isabel, Leona, and Lyra. Analyzing severity of the injury. Calculating DP usage. One by one, strings of prompts began to flash on the screen as the system calculated. Fortunately, he didn't need to wait long before it came to an answer. And seeing the result, it was not much different from what he had expected. Character Leona requires 5,000 DP. Character Lyra requires 1,000 DP. Character Isabel requires a total of 3,000 DP. Total amount 9,000 DP. Does the host proceed? Looking at the proceedings, Damien hesitated slightly. Right now, his parents were still battling at the Voss family. If he used all this, he would have only 1,000 DP. With 10,000, I'm sure I could easily turn this around no matter how bad the situation is. However, if I don't heal them now, I feel like today's events are going to leave a shadow in their hearts. Muttering inwardly at the final moment, Damien hesitated. After all, he was a human after all, and he was selfish. Apart from Isabel, who had grown up with him, Lyra and Leona were nowhere comparable to his parents in his heart. Now you tell him to heal them while his parents were in trouble. Damien hesitated. Cough, cough, asterisk. Damn it, system, proceed. Clenching his teeth, he made a decision. In an instant, the DP in his property panel began to drop rapidly. 10,000. 9,000. 8,000. Soon, before he knew it, everything had been cleared, leaving only 1/10 of what had been there for him. Sigh. I hope my decision was worth it. Thinking that the 3 of them should currently be experiencing their changes, Damien just smiled, waiting to see their reaction. The Elf Empire, World Tree Guest Room. Time soon passed, and just like Damien expected, the room was soon in chaos. Without getting much rest, his room was soon filled with 3 anxious faces. Young Master. Young Lord. Voss Kid. Running into his room, the 3 Isabel, Leona, and Lyra could hardly believe it. Just a few minutes ago, they were lost in thought, contemplating their injuries, wondering how to continue and if they would ever fully recover. However, now they were healed. How could they not be excited? Instinctively, the 3 of them ran to Damien's room to tell him the good news. Unfortunately, entering here and seeing him still injured, they instantly understood something. Young Master, did you? Said Isabel. But Damien, seeing her speak, quickly interrupted her words. It's all right. I don't know what you 3 are thinking, but don't look at me with such eyes. But whatever it is, I can assure you you're wrong. Also, seeing as the 3 of you ran into my room, I'm assuming you're healed now. Haha, it seems like these elves truly have good health care. Cough, cough. With a wide smile on his face, seeing them move so energetically, Damien was somewhat glad for his choice. However, feeling the pain pulsing through his body, his find soon faded. Fortunately, neither of them noticed this, as they were too busy thinking about his words just now. Looking at their leader pretending not to know what happened, although they had no proof, they believed their changes originated from Damien. And it seemed not only they thought so, as a voice they had heard not too long ago suddenly sounded in the room. Oh, I didn't know that Thuron had any skills that could heal, because although my elves are good, the injury levels of you guys are not something we can cure in a few minutes like this. Haha, interesting nephew, you never cease to surprise me. Walking into the room, Aelinor, who had appeared at some point, chuckled at the scene in front of her, a hint of surprise flashing through her eyes. Interesting, Thuron, Elizabeth. It seems both of you gave birth to an interesting child. Don't worry, I'll look after him for you. As if thinking of something, Aelinor's eyes flashed with pain and a hint of doubt before going back to normal. Damien, I was coming to check up on you as well as deliver some good and bad news to you. However, seeing as most of you are all right and you're okay enough to heal others, I might as well deliver the news. Which do you want to hear, the good or the bad news? Taking a seat, Aelinor looked at all four of them with a wry smile on her face, as she knew the fate of these children from here on out would be anything but easy. As an elder and a mother whose daughter they had desperately protected, the only thing she could do was protect them. Lost in thought, just as her mind began to wander, Damien's voice brought her back to reality. "Good news, I would like to hear the good news," he said. To which Aelinor was not surprised. After experiencing such a mental loss, any bit of good news would go a long way. So with this in mind, she didn't hesitate. Firstly, the tears of the goddess of life have successfully been preserved. As long as you use them, not only should your body be completely healed, but it can also awaken an extra talent for you and enable you to use both your mana and aura core simultaneously. Easily pointing out Damien's mana and aura core issues, Aelinor looked at him with a smile. And as for the bad news, she paused, giving everyone a minute to gather their thoughts. Damien, it seems like you can't go home anytime soon. Word just reached us that the entire Voss family is gone. Word just reached us that the entire Voss family is gone. Not giving them a chance to react, Aelinor continued to speak. Although I don't know what happened on your father's end, it seemed the Voss family went wild this time. Of the 52 nobles in the empire, 50 were assassinated overnight, almost instantly collapsing the entire country. The remaining 2 are seriously injured. Had it not been for some special means, they too would have died. As for Thuron and Elizabeth, they directly stormed the royal capital with their people, attacking the royal family. It is rumored that the heaven and earth shook, as all kinds of hidden 7th and 8th orders joined the fray. Even your ancestor is said to have joined, increasing the scale of the war to a 9th order disaster. Recalling all the information she received, even though she was the one who said it, Aelinor was shaken. 9th order war, this hadn't happened in over 100 years. What in the world was happening in the world? Thinking of this, she suddenly turned to the void in front of her. As shocking as it may seem, I know you have a lot of questions to ask. Unfortunately, I'm as clueless as you. The only thing I know now is that in the royal capital of the Dragon Empire, all that remains is a crater hundreds of meters wide. No sign of life anywhere, and the former land of the Voss family, the same. If you really want an answer, you should ask him. Life sacred art, elemental bind. Casting a spell, multiple vine-like branches made of life, mana suddenly appeared, grasping into the void. A move that left Damien and the others confused. At least that was until a faint figure suddenly emerged. Alfred. Looking at the figure who was bound by vines, Damien's mind was shaken. With his familiar set of gray hair, thin physique and black suit, it was none other than his father's right-hand man, the Voss family 7th order steward, Ulfried. Damn, since when had this old man been hidden? Could it be that my stupid father assigned him to follow me ever since we left the mansion? However, if that's the case, why didn't he help us against Charon? Lost in thought, a flurry of emotions welled up from within Damien's heart. Anger that Alfred had not helped despite all that had happened. Fear that he had been watching him since, and his secrets might be exposed. Hope that his father might still be okay, and Alfred would tell him everything Eleanor just said was a lie. Lying on his bed, injured, Damien looked at Alfred deeply, his attention focused on the man before him. And Alfred, having been exposed, just smiled wryly as he raised his hands in surrender. As expected of the master's comrade, it seems that this old man can't hide from you. When did you notice? Although this old man is nowhere near the master in terms of strength, in terms of stealth, I should be in the top 10 on the continent. Also, young master, it's good to finally talk to you, although you might not forgive me. But it's not that I didn't want to help you, but the master said I could not expose myself till news of his death or disappearance had begun to circulate. Although I do not know why, it seems like the master had already planned to do this. Perhaps this was why he let you go out in the first place. Still bound by Eleanor's vines, Alfred showed no anger or surprise. Rather, looking at his young master, he felt deeply sad. Even though he wasn't sure what was going on himself. The fact remained that the young master at only 12 seemed to have just lost both his parents. Master Thuron, what in the God's name are you planning? Muttering inwardly, he turned to look at the person who bound him. Eleanor of the Elf Forest, the queen of the elves and the only living high elf. However, now such a person was staring daggers at him. Talk, old man, what is that bastard Thuron up to? Don't tell me that old man and old woman Elizabeth planned to dump their child with me and go on a holiday. Also, when did I notice you? From the moment you stepped into the forest, I noticed you. I don't know if you know this, but elves are the darlings of nature, and as a high elf, I am even more so. Coming into the elf forest, you were no less than a light bulb in my eyes. Had it not been for the presence of Voss Mana, I would have eliminated you since. Casually speaking, Eleanor released her restraints on him. Regardless of what the old man in front of her said, she did not believe that people like Thuron and Elizabeth would lose their lives to some trash empire. Something else must be going on somewhere. So with this in mind, she turned toward Damien, who was still in Disciplef, and Isabel, Lyra and Leona, who were shocked, unable to comprehend what they were talking about. Impossible. How could the master and mistress be gone? You must be lying. Shouting angrily, Isabel instantly grew out her horns, and her whole body burst into flames. Isabel, stand down. Shouting angrily, Damien, who was also in shock, shouted at the unstable Isabel. Regardless of whether it was true or not, now wasn't the time to lose control. Isabel, from now on, don't say anything. The same goes for Lyra and Leona. Until I say otherwise, I don't want anyone interrupting my thoughts. Wearing a cold expression, it was clear that this news had greatly stimulated Damien. And to make things worse, the nonchalant expressions on Eleanor's and Alfred's faces made him angrier. However, what he failed to realize was that it was not that they did not care, but that neither Eleanor nor Alfred genuinely believed that Thuron died. After all, before he was the Voss family patriarch and a father. He was none other than the world's strongest man. Unless the gods personally descended, they didn't believe anyone could kill Thuron. Yes, despite the current situation, neither Eleanor nor Alfred believed that Thuron would lose so easily. As someone both of them knew for years, they knew he wasn't one to die just like that. However, even then, they couldn't be 100% sure he was alive. Now, looking at the angry Damien, neither of them knew what to say. The kid in front of them had just fought a life-threatening battle. His life was almost lost, and his friends nearly died in front of him. How dare they say his parents were alive without any proof? For a time, silence filled the room as neither Alfred nor Eleanor knew what to say. Young Master Damien, please. You must understand that the patriarch is not a man without a plan. Although he laughs a lot and is called the world's strongest man when it comes to serious things, he actually overthinks things the most. Just look at the fact that he sent you out before this and sent him to follow you. Even the fact that he ordered me not to act until now probably had its own meaning, said Alfred. And Eleanor, hearing this, knew it was her time to chip in. Indeed, although I don't want to admit it, as strong as Thuron was, he also did have a brain. And based on the current situation, I can probably tell why he told you not to act. Waving her hand slightly, two vines suddenly stretched into the room, carrying a poster each in their grasp. Loyal butler and traitor to mankind, Butler Alfred. Danger level, catastrophic, predicted 7th level strength. Bounty of 10 million gold. Reading its contents, she turned to the other paper. Empire announcement. Along with the Dragon Empire, all other empires have named the Voss family members traitors of mankind. Any information regarding them will be rewarded with 1,000 gold. Any member brought dead or alive will be rewarded with 1 million gold, redeemable in all human empires. Hearing this, the faces of everyone in the room instantly froze. 1 million gold. Not to talk about the 10 million gold rewarded for Alfred. 1 million gold is something that even most 7th Order won't make in their lifetime. If anything, with such an amount, it won't be surprising if even dragons become greedy and start to act. His facial expression gloomy, Damien realized that they were in serious trouble. If the news leaked that the current heir of the Voss family was alive, and in the Elf Empire, all of them, including the elves, could end up being destroyed. Fortunately, there's only one person at the moment who knows that we're here and our true identities. Garrick. Recalling the strange warning his guts gave him regarding him, Damien turned toward Eleanor. Perhaps as partners, she might know more about it. Maybe she could even tell him if his worries were warranted or false. Thinking of this, he didn't hesitate. All right, Aunt Eleanor, Alfred sulking isn't going to change anything. In fact, I think Isabel, Leona, and I should leave as soon as possible. As if that bounty you read is real, then associating with us could lead to your total annihilation. Sighing unwillingly, he turned to look at Lyra, who was still lost in thought. As an elf, as much as he valued her future potential, staying with Eleanor might be much safer. So not giving her a chance to object, he continued to speak. However, Aunt, before we do go, I want to ask you something. Do you know anything about Garrick? He was the one who let us know that the Elf Empire might already be under attack. He also stated that someone was trying to hunt down all of you who were at the same party. If that's true, have you encountered anything similar? And do you think that group could also be part of the reason for Dad's loss? Voicing his doubts, Damien expressed his concerns. However, much to his surprise, as soon as she heard the name Garrick, the atmosphere in the room instantly changed. Boom! Instantly, the floorboards creaked, and the atmosphere became suffocating. The four Damien, Isabel, Lyra, and Leona felt like a huge mountain was pressed against their shoulders as they had trouble breathing, much less standing. Especially Damien, who was the only one still critically injured, as under the sudden pressure, he coughed out a clot of blood. Cough asterisk asterisk cough asterisk. Inwardly, his barely healed organs had begun to rupture, starting a new round of internal bleeding, and his vision became blurry. Luckily for them, before any lasting damage occurred, Alfred quickly acted. Shadow Hound. Condensing his shadow mana into a giant hound, it pounced on Eleanor, directly attracting her attention. Snap out of it, Miss Eleanor. If you continue like this, you'll kill the young master and the others. Launching another attack, Alfred, who saw that the elf queen in front of him had lost her senses, began to fight back. Unfortunately, at this moment, She could not hear any words. Lost in rage, only a few incoherent sentences emerged from her mouth. Garrick Gassick. How dare you come here? How dare you betray us? How dare you? How dare you? How dare you? As if possessed by a demon, Eleanor began to lose control, her mana spiked, and the destruction continued to spread. And even though they were both seventh orders, Alfred was clearly outmatched. Unlike he who was at seventh order because that was his limit, Eleanor was seventh order because her abilities were limited. In terms of combat sense, skill, precision, and coordination, she had long since transcended seventh order, making her invincible in the same realm. A fact that made the current scenario extremely dangerous. If something wasn't done, and her temper was not reined in, everyone's life could end up being lost here today. Seeing this, Damien, who experienced another round of powerlessness, silently clenched his fists as he struggled to stay awake under the pressure. Power. He silently swore that as long as he survived this elf forest, he would do anything and everything to gain power. No more feeling of weakness. No more. Renewing his grit, Damien's eyes turned savage. Enough, I'm tired of being on the losing end. What seventh order, what demon god? All of you get out for me. Roaring inwardly, Damien, who was on death's door not long ago, began to explode with unseen vigor. His currently decayed mana and aura core burst into new life. They seemed to scream. If I'm going out, let me go out in a bang. Boom! In an instant, a new power which Damien had never manifested before began to form. With him at the center, a power which didn't seem to be mana spread from his body. Under this pressure, be it Eleanor, Alfred, Isabel, Lenoa, or Lyra all paused in their tracks. King's will. Muttering in shock, Alfred and Eleanor couldn't believe what they were seeing. King's will, along with domain, be the key to breaking through the eighth order. It is said, under the might of the king, none may stand. To think I would see this power in a 12-year-old kid. Lost in thought, Eleanor, who had just got her senses back, could hardly believe what she was witnessing. Could she say that this was fate, as the last person to comprehend was none other than his father, Damien Voss? Damien kid, when will you run out of surprises? Muttering silently, she looked at the surroundings. At this time, under their three-way pressure, Isabel and the others had long since fainted, leaving only Damien and Alfred awake. Looking at this scenario, she instantly knew she had to apologize. Damien kid, Auntie is sorry for the outburst just now. However, you should understand that the name Garrick is a taboo for me. She paused. I don't know if you were paying attention, but I mentioned being betrayed. According to my investigations, it was none other than Garrick who sold me out. And he is helping you to get here. I'm sure he has some other plans. Perhaps he hoped that we would both die under Charon, or he wanted you to report on the current situation here. However, no matter what, I can assure you that that bastard Garrick is none other than an ungrateful, jealous bastard who will do anything to achieve his goals. If I had known, I would never have stopped your father from killing him back then. Reigning in her killing intent, Eleanor explained her relationship with Garrick without going too deep into it. Perhaps for some special reasons, however, no matter how much Damien asked, she was unwilling to explain too much. Seeing this, Damien decisively changed the topic. If she did not want to tell him, then he would just have to get stronger and find out for himself. All right, let's forget about that. What do you mean by will? Speaking of this, in the original novel, he hadn't heard of such a power, different from the mana core that resided in his heart and the aura core in his lower dantian. This power floated in the middle, forming a faint connection between the two. He even felt that it was slowly repairing them. Unfortunately, the current repair speed was next to nothing. For such a power that he had never heard about, he was beyond curious. Fortunately for this, Eleanor did not want to seem to hide. "All right, kid, I was planning on training after this, so I'll explain. Just like breaking through fourth order is a huge transformation, the same can be said for seventh, eighth, and ninth order, with each increase an exponential gap. In layman's terms, no amount of seventh orders can beat an eighth order, and no amount of eighth orders can beat a ninth order. At those stages, numbers don't mean anything anymore." Pausing slightly, Eleanor took a quick look at Alfred and continued. "And to break through eighth order, some special methods need to be taken, with the strongest method known so far being the one that deals with will. Unfortunately, it's too hard to awaken will, as it's less than 1% of seventh orders that can awaken it. To be honest, apart from your father, you both might be the only awakeners of will in the past few hundred years. I'm sure if your father were here, he would be able to give you more advice and training on it. Sadly, that's all the information I know," said Eleanor, her eyes glistening as she looked at Damien. However, Damien, hearing this, was still not satisfied. "Firstly, you said it's one of the methods to break through the eighth order. What is the method, and what are the other methods? And secondly, you said you plan to train me. When? And I don't remember agreeing to that." Knowing that there were still a lot of opportunities he had to steal and plans to develop, how could he remain here in the name of some training? Not to mention his parents' condition was still unknown. She had to be joking. Unfortunately, Eleanor's next words poured a bucket of cold water over his thoughts. "Damien, kid, don't get ahead of yourself. If I tell you more about the eighth order, it would do more harm than good to you. It's not a power your current self and mind can comprehend. If you almost lost your will against Charon, who didn't even attack you at full strength thanks to me, then hearing about the eighth order, your spirit would probably break." Spitting the cold but hard truth, Eleanor didn't care if she sounded harsh, but she felt this nephew of hers needed to hear this. Due to that, even if she would hurt his feelings, she didn't stop talking. "As for training you, did you really think I would let you out like this? Not to mention you are being hunted by almost everyone in the world, but your Voss mana is too noticeable. Not only that, but your use of knowledge and mana is crude and unrefined. It seems you never had a teacher and were self-taught. Because of that, all your moves are far less efficient than they should be, wasting mana and aura with every move. You also don't know the essence of spells and mana, causing you to only do structured moves, no free form in your combat." Pointing out his flaws, Damien, despite being strong and having so much mana and aura, has various finishing moves. In Eleanor's eyes, he was no more than a toddler swinging a giant greatsword. Although impressive that a toddler could carry such a thing at his age, that was it. Any more skilled, slightly powerful person would easily overwhelm him. A sad but eventual truth. However, don't worry, stay here for 6 months. 6 months, and I'll train you before letting you go. After that, I'll even give you a recommendation later to another of our party members you can trust. The only dwarf in our team, and the heaviest drinker in all of Ilias. The Dwarf King Durin." Hearing that name, Damien's eyes instantly widened in shock. That old fellow, in the original novel, his character always pissed me off. He seemed not to put anyone in his eyes apart from the dwarves. Even the original protagonist couldn't get him to make weapons for them, as he seemed to hate humans particularly. Had it not been for the threat of the demon invasion, he wouldn't have joined the coalition of all races at the end. Muttering inwardly, Damien began to recall information about Durin from the novel. Durin, otherwise known as the King of Dwarves, was a person who would later break through demigod level and even be hailed in the continent as the god of craftsmen. He alone was the critical node in the dwarves' breakthrough in their golem and mecha technology. bringing mechas to a fantasy world. I remember other readers were paused when they first saw a Gundam flatten an invading human empire. As he thought of this, he couldn't help but take another look at his aunt. Although he had already planned to go to the Dwarven Empire to get some weapons, having an invitation letter to see Durin was so much better. If everything worked out well, not only would he be able to get a good set of weapons, perhaps the best on the continent, but he could also get a large portion of DP. Thinking of this, Damien couldn't help but get excited. And Eleanor, seeing this, couldn't help but chuckle. He told her it seems someone is happy. However, remember this, it isn't a guarantee that after reading it he'll help you. After all, even I can't control what that drunkard does. But bring the letter, it should at least let you meet him, said Eleanor. However, one thing she didn't say was that all this was on the premise that Damien patiently stayed and went through her training. A condition that Damien was unwilling to accept. After all, as much as he wanted those weapons, he wanted to return to the Voss household and investigate what happened. Perhaps he could even get a few clues to where they were. Wait a minute, clues. System, can you find out the location of my parents? Turning his eyes to the system, Damien's eyes lit up. With the system, he should be able to at least find them. After all, until now, the system had never let him down apart from being too expensive. Please, please, don't let me down now. Crossing his fingers, Damien silently prayed. Despite Alfred and Eleanor's confused faces, his mind remained fully focused on the system. Assessing user inquiry. Scanning for characters Thuron and Elizabeth Voss. Detecting divine power obstruction. Attempting to clear. Consuming available DP. DP insufficient. In a series of quick flash notifications, Damien's emotions experienced a roller coaster. From the joy of the beginning attempt to the insufficient message at the bottom. A sense of frustration suddenly began to arise. However, as quickly as it came, he calmed himself down. Relax, Damien, you aren't out of options yet. Sighing slightly, after taking a second to regain himself, he turned his attention again to the system. Just now, even with him exhausting his 1000 DP, he still couldn't find any information regarding where they were. However, that didn't mean it wasn't useful. At least this just proved that as long as he had enough DP, he could find their location. System, are they alive? And how much DP is required to locate them? Yes, even if he couldn't find where they were, he at least had to know if they were alive. Fortunately, this time the system did not let him down. Detecting that characters Thuron and Elizabeth Voss are still alive. Amount needed to locate them, 100,000 DP. Reading this, instantly Damien felt a huge weight be lifted off his chest. Through these two notifications, he understood a lot of things. Firstly, his parents were still alive, which was the most important thing. Secondly, wherever they were, they most likely had something to do with a demigod, as working with his father's hand as a unit of measurement. Damien had since come to realize that things involving DP had their prices based on various things. The knowledge and relation he had with the item, their ability and importance to the world. And lastly, their strength. Unlike a father's hand, which was priced at over 1 million to cure, 100,000 most likely means it involves a demi. While still powerful, it's still better than being kidnapped or trapped by a god. Thinking of this, his eyes suddenly narrowed. If he wanted to save them and gain enough DP, he most likely needed to do something that would subvert the whole world. And considering the protagonist was still probably a newborn, he had to do it without relying on the plot. A feat that he would undoubtedly need a lot of strength for. Auntie, I accept your conditions. In these 6 months, I hope to learn as much as possible from you. You to Alfred, I'll implore you to teach all of us during these next 6 months." Struggling to give a bow, Damien, who was still injured, expressed his thoughts. For himself, for his loved ones, for his future. He had to get stronger as soon as possible, and to do that, he had to get all the help he could. "All right then, if you agree, then take this." Throwing Damien a green vial, Eleanor began to slowly stand up. "In it is the tear of the goddess of life. As long as you take it, all your injuries will be healed. Take it and rest up, as from tomorrow you all will start your training, and be prepared. In order not to have you dying on me in the future, I'm not going to hold back." Tilda. Giving a light chuckle, she left the room, dragging Alfred with her. "Also, don't mind me. I'll be borrowing this rat who has been sneaking about for a bit. I still need to ask him something about your parents." A move which left Damien helpless. So, ignoring the pleading eyes of Alfred as he was being dragged, Damien slowly opened the vial. "Mum, Dad, hold on, I'm coming. Warm." This was the exact feeling Damien had, as the tears entered his throat. Tilda, this feels amazing." Letting out a moan of pleasure, his current state was hard to describe. It was as if his body was being hugged from the inside out. As if he had returned to his mother's womb, a warm feeling of vitality enveloped his whole being. Under the rapid influx of life energy, his body began to change. His once faint aura began to flow under this new stimulus, and his mana began to rise. His blue eyes, which had previously lost some light, shone brighter than the sky itself. It had only been a few seconds since he had drunk it, yet Damien felt like he had been reborn many times over. Not only that, but as my internal injuries and bones heal, I can feel them getting stronger, constantly strengthening and recovering. It's no wonder the original protagonist got a major boost after consuming it. Right now, I feel like I can beat 2 of my previous selves. Clenching his fists, he grew power in between his fingers, which made him feel intoxicated. His willpower in response to this began to grow, forming a connection with his aura and mana core. Instantly, the growth rate of some of them tripled under this connection. And to make things better, just when Damien was lost in his newfound power, his system suddenly sounded, attracting his attention. Detecting the host has awakened celestial life physic, stealing the original protagonist's opportunity. Detecting the host has fully absorbed the golden dragon breathing method. Detecting the host is transforming. Rewarding 10,000 DP. Consuming 3000 DP to guide proper energy absorption. Without waiting for Damien to ask, sensing the oncoming energy, the system began to issue a series of rewards. So much so that seeing these notifications, a realization suddenly came to his mind. So that's what happened. I always wondered why I didn't get a reward after we stole the breathing method. At first I thought it was because Italica wasn't there nor the dragon beasts, but it turns out it was because I never fully absorbed it. Only after awakening the celestial life physic did I finally claim it for myself. Pausing slightly, he turned to the other notification. Celestial life physic, born from consuming the tears of the goddess of life. In the original story, after being given by the then elf princess, the protagonist awakened it. A physique that allowed him to manipulate both aura and mana easily without backlash, gain a strong affinity with nature and life magic, and an extraordinary healing factor that allowed him to recover from most injuries without fail. In this world where all kinds of crazy and weird physiques exist, this could easily last in the top 30. Larg. Just as he was about to continue analyzing his situation, Damien couldn't help but let out a scream in pain. No longer was it the familiar smooth healing embrace he felt before. Rather, his whole body was in pain. He seemed to feel his bones and muscles being shattered and put back together. a pain so bad it reminded him of when he got Isabel's ability in the carriage. Arg! Damn it, don't you dare faint, Damien. This is beneath you. If you can't hold back on such little pain, then what reason do you think you can withstand the pain to come in the future? To what reason do you think you can save your parents? To what reason do you think that you can survive the trials to come, the anguish to experience and the loss to bear? Talking to himself, Damien bit his teeth, subconsciously mobilizing his will. Under this pressure, the bed and its surroundings began to creak. Unfortunately, he couldn't pay attention as he was currently occupied by the pain. Right now, he had reached the peak of his transformation. He couldn't afford to falter for any reason, otherwise everything would be for naught. A situation Damien was most unwilling to see. Yeah. Elf Empire, Forbidden Forest. Time soon passed, and under the constant pain, a day and night had passed, pushing back his training. Fortunately, that time was not wasted, as currently, Damien was completely transformed inside and out. 5'8", he had unexpectedly shot up to 6 foot tall, adorned with muscles from head to toe and waist-length silver hair that sparkled in the night sky. With his radiant blue eyes and skin without blemishes, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say he had turned into a model overnight. With a physique that surpassed most adults, at only 12 years old, Damien was a through-and-through anomaly. A situation which he didn't mind, rather looked forward to, as only an anomaly can survive in this world of gods and demons. Now sitting cross-legged in an all-green robe surrounded by all kinds of trees and plants, he was currently faced with Eleanor. After waiting for so long, it was time for his training to begin. "My dear nephew, it seems you decided to take your time, Tilda. Those little girls of yours have been training while you were still busy, and judging from their pace of learning, if you're not careful, they'll soon surpass you." Chuckling lightly, Eleanor looked at her nephew with a wry smile. In fact, she knew that absorbing the tears of the goddess of life would take him some time. However, what she expected was at least a week, yet he managed to absorb it in just 2 days. How could she not be surprised? "Monster," she muttered inwardly. A complete opposite of her outward disposition, where she poked fun at him for taking so long. After all, she couldn't afford her cute nephew becoming an arrogant bastard. Thinking of this, she turned to get a closer look at him. "All right, kid, you've already wasted enough time. So let's start. What do you understand by mana?" she asked, raising a green orb of energy. Hearing this, Damien instantly rolled his eyes. "Of course, I know what mana is, be it aura or mana. It's the fundamental energy that constitutes the world we live in. It's also why mages and wizards can use it to leverage the world laws through incredible acts of summoning fire or water out of nowhere and manipulating the elements. Same can be said for aura users too, as under the use of aura, things like dividing the sea and moving mountains can be easily done by high-ranking aura users," said Damien. "Don't look at him. Never having a teacher, but while he was a child, ever since he could read, he always locked himself in the Voss family library, reading every information he could. So much so that he felt that, when it came to most people, he was invincible in theoretical knowledge. He doubted there was anything Eleanor would ask him that he couldn't answer. Instead, rather than wasting time here, it would be more beneficial for him to learn some actual combat techniques, his real weakness. Tilda Aunt Eleanor, no matter how much you want to teach me, you can't look down on me. If anything in this aspect, I should be the one teaching you." Thinking inwardly, Damien had a smug smile on his face. He couldn't wait to see the look of surprise on her face after she heard his answer. Unfortunately, that did not happen, as, rather than hearing his answer, she just shook her head sideways, seemingly unimpressed. I see. It seems that idiot Thuron didn't teach you anything, and your mother was always over-pampering you. She was one who always loved kids. Back then, whenever she saw kids being trafficked or begging on the streets, she would always lose her cool. Remembering the past, a bright smile appeared on Eleanor's face. However, now that they're not here, I'll do their job for them. At the end of our 6 months, I'll ask you again what mana is. For now, stand up. Going into a fighting stance, she became Damien with her right hand. Come at me, kid. I won't use mana or anything. As long as you can touch me once, you win. Not only that, but I'll end all your classes with me on the spot. Next would only be your training with that geezer Alfred. Still smiling, Eleanor at this time seemed more like a mischievous kid than the valiant elf queen. Staring at Damien, her eyes seemed to want to devour him. A scene which Damien unfortunately did not notice, as right now he was more focused on her words. Fight him without mana or aura. Just how much was she looking down on him? Feeling annoyed, he instantly readied his mana and aura. All right then, don't blame me if you get injured, Auntie, but I won't go easy on you. Lounging at her, he activated his full strength. Dual secret art, golden shadow form. Boom! With a loud bang, his aura suddenly surged, destroying the surrounding rocks and grass. His figure became faint as his body was covered with a full plate of golden armor, laced with black shadow flames. The only part of his body visible was a small visor region, showing his black and golden eyes. However, despite such an intimidating sight, Eleanor just chuckled. He tilde not bad at this rate. You might be able to draw with me when I was 10 years old. Laughing slightly, Eleanor taunted as she dodged his punch. Too slow. Is this your actual strength? Is it a miracle you survived this long? Or maybe that Jezer Alfred secretly acted? Still taunting, Eleanor continued to dodge his attacks. Shadow Bind. Golden Thorns. Shadow Grasp. Unfortunately, no matter what Damien did, it was like a kid trying to get back his candy from an adult. Futile. Damn it, stop dogging and fight me. Does the Queen of Elves only know how to dodge? Yelling angrily, Damien continued to launch his attacks. Shadow Wings. Golden Art, 100 lances. Flying up into the air, with wings made of shadow, Damien summoned 100 golden lances condensed of pure mana, raining down on Eleanor's direction. Such a move that was impossible to dodge, unless you used a maneuver. At least that was what Damien thought. The next thing he saw made him completely lose his mind. Not only did Eleanor not use mana, but unexpectedly she jumped. Jumping from one lance to another, without mana, she had used the lances as a form of air staircase walking up in the air. A scene that made Damien curse out loud. Damn, what kind of monster is this? Report, she must be cheating. Unfortunately, even cursing could not stop Eleanor. A few seconds passed, and before Damien could react, she had already made it to where he was. Kid, firstly, who the hell told you to shout out the names of the moves when you unleash them? And secondly, with you wasting so much mana with each attack, even if I were blind, I would be able to dodge all of them. Now clench your teeth because this is going to hurt. Not giving Damien a chance to reply, she wound her right fist backwards before punching him into the ground. Boom! Like a missile descending from the sky, Damien shot headfirst into the ground, leaving a crater. And Eleanor, who delivered the punch, floated down easily right behind. Kid, next time I ask what mana is, I don't mean that textbook answer you gave me. Only by understanding the true meaning of mana can you become a true powerhouse. Right now, you're nothing more than a baby with a large sword. It's a miracle you haven't gotten hurt yet. Muttering slightly, Eleanor looked at the pit where Damien had fallen. Unfortunately, he seemed to have fainted, causing the class to end here. Kid, It seems you and Auntie have a long way to go. I wonder what those girls are doing. Last time I spoke to Alfred, he said they were all impressive, especially that girl Isabella. Her desire to become stronger is POV. Time goes back a day, while Damien was still in transformation. Isabel at this time had already begun her training. Hatilda. Hungry. I'm so hungry. Sitting cross-legged on a flat stone in the middle of the training grounds, Isabel wasn't thinking about the fate of the world or the impending war. She was thinking about mana. Specifically, she wanted to eat the mana around her. Ever since she awakened her Barrows-Ignean bloodline, a gnawing, bottomless pit had opened up in her stomach. It wasn't a hunger for food. Although the slime soup was delicious, it was a hunger for energy. Is this what it means to be a demon, she thought, clutching the hem of her maid dress. To always want more, to never be satisfied. However, why is it worse not that I'm away from the master? Thinking about her young master, whom she hadn't seen in almost a day, Isabel felt weird. This was the longest she had ever stayed without being by his side, and because of this, she felt particularly on edge. Focus, Miss Isabel. A calm, refined voice cut through her thoughts. Standing a few meters away, dressed in his impeccable black butler suit despite the rugged forest surroundings, was Alfred, the Seventh Order steward of the Voss family. Adjusting his glasses, he didn't look like a warrior nor a mage. Instead, he looked like he was about to serve tea. However, Isabel knew better. This was the man who had shadowed them for weeks without Lyra, an elf ranger, or the young master ever noticing. You are distracted, Alfred noted, his voice dry. A maid must always be attentive. If you cannot focus on your internal state, how can you focus on the young master's needs? Isabel flushed. I'm trying, Mr. Alfred, but the hunger, it's loud. The hunger is a tool, not a master, Alfred said. He raised a hand. Shadows coalesced around his fingers, forming 5 distinct pitch-black daggers. You have power, Miss Isabel, immense power, gravity and fire, but you wield it like a club. A Voss servant must be precise. Swish. Alfred flicked his wrist. The 5 shadow daggers flew at her, moving in unpredictable curving arcs. Eek! Isabel instinctively raised her hands. Firewall. Whoosh! A chaotic curtain of crimson hellfire erupted in front of her, burning the grass and scorching the air. It was a massive expenditure of mana. But Alfred's shadows didn't hit the wall. They slipped through the gaps in the flames, weaving around the heat like smoke. Tab, tab, tab. Isabel felt 3 light touches on her shoulders and neck. The daggers had stopped inches from her skin, held by Alfred's control. Dead, Alfred stated simply, 3 times over. The daggers dissolved into mist. You used a sledgehammer to kill a fly, Alfred critiqued, walking closer. You poured 20% of your mana into a wall that protected nothing. If this were a real assassin, the young master would be dead, and you would be exhausted. Isabel bit her lip, tears pricking her eyes. I know. I'm useless. I'm just a clumsy maid who got lucky with a bloodline. Luck is a skill, Alfred corrected gently. And loyalty is a talent. The Master Lord Thuron saw potential in you. Young Master Damien sees family in you. Do not insult their judgment by pitying yourself. He adjusted his cuffs. The Barrows-Ignean demons are gluttons. They consume. Use that. Don't just push your mana out to block. Pull the enemy's mana in to feed. Pull it in, Isabel blinked. Gravity, Alfred hinted. It is the power of attraction. Instead of burning energy to create a shield, eat the attack. He stepped back again. This time Alfred didn't use daggers. He summoned a shadow hound, a massive wolf made of darkness, growling with 7th Order pressure. Roar! The hound charged. Isabel's heart hammered. Her instincts screamed to burn it, to explode everything. No, precision, like a maid cleaning a stain. Don't burn the house down, just remove the dirt. A whisper echoed in the back of her mind. The residual will, it was screaming for food. Eat it. Isabel's pupils constricted. The green of her eyes was swallowed by ruby red. Her horns, usually hidden, burst forth from her forehead. She didn't raise a wall. She opened her hand, palm facing the charging hound. Gravity, swallow. VWOM. A small, distorted sphere of purple gravity appeared in her palm. The shadow hound leapt and was caught. The gravity didn't crush it, it pulled it. The shadow mana that formed the wolf was stretched, twisted, and sucked into the vortex in Isabel's hand. Almost instantly, the energy rushed into her body. It was the cold shadow mana Alfred had just released, different from the nature mana that was all around the elf forest, or the fire she released. It was cold and lonely, much like her young master's mana, which gave her a bit of warmth. Soon, before she could react, it was absorbed by her mana core, recycled into flame and gravity mana for her to use. Not only that, but she noticed her mana core, which had only been formed and never been used, was slowly being filled. Unknowingly, by devouring that spell, she had unknowingly stepped into First Order. Burp. Isabel blinked. The hound was gone. Her mana was full. I ate the dog. Excellent, Alfred smiled, a rare, genuine expression. You saved mana, neutralized the threat, and refueled yourself. That is efficiency befitting a Voss maid. Isabel looked at her hands, a wide, slightly unhinged grin spreading across her face. I can eat attacks, I can eat shadows, I can eat everything. Don't get carried away, Alfred warned, sensing her thoughts. Indigestion kills demons too. Now go wash up, you have soot on your apron. Isabel retracted her horns, beaming. Yes, Mr. Alfred, thank you. She curtsied clumsily and ran off toward the stream to clean herself. Alfred watched her go, his smile fading into a look of concern. He looked up toward the high canopy of the world tree. One monster starts to control her hunger, Alfred muttered. Now, let's see if the other one can control her sorrow. His gaze shifted to the highest branch, where the wind was howling with an unnatural, mournful shriek. Lyra was up there, and she hadn't come down for 3 days. Lyra POV. Twang. An arrow of pure green wind mana hissed through the air, cutting a perfect line through the falling leaves. It struck the target. A small wooden fruit hung 300 meters away, dead center. Splat. The fruit exploded. Too loud, Lyra whispered, her ears twitching in irritation. She stood on the highest branch of the world tree, thousands of feet above the ground. Here the wind didn't just blow, it screamed. The air was thin, cold, and biting. It was the only place she could think. Twang. Another arrow, another hit. Too bright. She frowned, looking at the lingering trail of neon green, light the arrow left behind. To any other elf, her archery was perfection. She was a fourth-order ranger, capable of hitting a mosquito's wing from a kilometer away. But to Lyra, every shot felt wrong. Ever since the Slaver Fortress, the wind didn't feel the same. When she summoned her mana, it didn't feel light and breezy like it used to. It felt heavy. It felt cold. It was as if the anger she felt back then, the rage of seeing her squad in cages, had permanently stained her core. Focus, she scolded herself. You are a royal ranger, you are light, you are nature. She drew the string back again, trying to force the mana to be bright and cheerful. You're trying too hard. A voice drifted from the branch above her. Lyra spun around, drawing her mana bow instantly. An arrow formed, aimed at the intruder. Damien was sitting on a higher branch, legs dangling over the terrifying drop, eating a glowing blue apple. He wasn't wearing his noble clothes. He was dressed in a simple black training tunic, sweating slightly from his own training. "Reflexes are good," Damien noted, taking a bite of the apple. "But I heard your bowstring tighten before you even moved. If I were an assassin, you'd be dead." Lyra lowered the bow, letting the mana dissipate. "And if I were serious, you wouldn't have heard anything," she retorted, though her heart was pounding. "What do you want, kid? I thought you were busy getting beaten up by the Queen." "I finished early," Damien shrugged. He dropped down, landing silently beside her. "And Isabel is busy eating mana in the training yard, so I came to check on my sniper." He walked to the edge of the branch, looking out at the endless canopy of the elven forest. "You've been up here for 3 days, Lyra. The Queen says you're trying to force your archery back to what it was. Why?" "Because it's broken," Lyra snapped, frustration leaking into her voice. She held up her hand, summoning a small swirl of wind. "My mana, it feels heavy. Ever since Gravestone, when I try to use the breath of the forest technique, it fights me. It's not sharp anymore. It's dull." "It's not dull," Damien corrected, turning to face her. "It's dense." He leaned against the trunk, crossing his arms. "You aren't the same elf who left the forest, Lyra. You saw the ugliness of the world. You felt rage. You wanted to kill." Lyra flinched. "That was a mistake. I almost lost control." "Was it?" Damien smirked. "Or did you just finally see the world for what it is?" He held out his hand. "Shadow magic." Black smoke curled from his fingers, forming a small, spinning dagger. It didn't reflect light, it swallowed it. "The elves teach you that wind is freedom, lightness, breath, that's fine for a scout." Damien tossed the shadow dagger. It didn't make a sound. It cut through the air like a phantom, disappearing into the bark of the tree trunk 10 meters away without a whisper. "But wind also carries the storm," Damien said softly, "and shadows travel faster than light because they are already there." Lyra looked at the shadow dagger buried deep in the wood. It hadn't made a sound. "You want me to use darkness. But as an elf, I don't have the affinity for that." Hearing this, Damien shook his head. "I want you to stop fighting yourself," Damien said. "You have a talent, Lyra, a talent for the kill. That heavy feeling in your mana isn't a defect, it's intent." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a coaching tone. "Don't try to shoot an arrow of light. Light gets seen, light gets blocked." He pointed at the target fruit in the distance. "Shoot an arrow that becomes the air, invisible, silent, deadly." Lyra hesitated. She closed her eyes. She felt for that cold, jagged feeling she had been suppressing, the trauma, the anger, the heaviness. Usually she pushed it down, trying to purify it. This time she pulled it up. She mixed it with the wind. V-wum. The air around her changed. The glowing green light of her mana dimmed, turning a deep, dark emerald, almost invisible against the forest backdrop. The high-pitched whine of the wind died down, suffocated by heavy pressure. A bow formed in her hand, but it wasn't the bright, translucent construct she usually used. It was dark, hazy, like heat shimmering off pavement. She pulled the string. There was no hum, no vibration, just silence. An arrow formed. It wasn't made of light. It was made of compressed, vacuum-like wind. It distorted the view behind it. "Target," Damien whispered. Lyra opened her eyes. They were still blue, but they were cold, focused. She released. PH whip. There was no sound of travel. One moment the arrow was on the string, the next it was gone. 300 meters away, the wooden fruit target didn't explode. It simply vanished. A clean, circular hole appeared in the tree trunk behind it, piercing through 5 meters of solid wood as if it weren't there. The arrow dissolved into mist on the other side. Lyra lowered the bow, staring at her hands. Her heart was racing. "It didn't resist," she whispered. "The wind, it moved for me." "Phantom arrow," Damien named it, nodding in approval. Although this was a technique she would discover and use in the future, it doesn't hurt teaching her now, he thought. Shamelessly claiming the credit, he continued to guide her. Wind for speed, density for penetration. No shield can block what it can't detect. He looked at her. You don't need to be a pure elf to be strong, Lyra. Sometimes the world needs a shadow to hunt the monsters. Lyra clenched her fist. The dark emerald mana swirled obediently around her fingers. It didn't feel wrong anymore. It felt like a weapon. She looked at Damien. He wasn't asking for an oath. He wasn't forcing a contract. He was just giving her the key to her own power. You talk like a villain, kid, Lyra murmured, a small, complicated smile playing on her lips. But your advice works. I'm just practical, Damien grinned. We leave soon. I need my sniper to be ready. He turned to leave, waving over his shoulder. Rest up. Tomorrow we'll go see how our tank is doing. Lyra watched him go. She looked back at the hole in the tree trunk. She raised her hand, summoning the dark wind again. It felt natural now. Phantom arrow. I like the sound of that, Leona POV. Clang. A heavy iron greatsword smashed into the ground, vibrating violently from the impact. Again. Leona roared, sweat pouring down her forehead, her breathing heavy but steady as her muscles tensed. Taking a deep breath, she picked up the sword, a spare training weapon provided by the elves, and swung it with all her might. Whoosh! The blade cut the air, heavy and fierce. It smashed into the enchanted wooden training dummy. Crack! The dummy splintered, a deep gash appearing in its side. Weak, Leona growled, tossing the sword aside in disgust. Too weak. She looked at her hands. They were trembling. Not from pain, the young lord had healed her injuries completely with that miraculous golden light, but from frustration. Ever since the battle with Charon, she felt small. She was supposed to be the vanguard, the shield, the one who stood in front of the young lord. But against the lick, she had been tossed aside like a rag doll. If Damien hadn't saved her, she would be a mindless zombie right now. Is this the limit of a beast man? She looked around the elven training grounds. The royal guards were sparring nearby, moving with fluid, elegant grace. They looked at her, a hulking lion girl swinging a slab of iron like a brute with a mix of curiosity and pity. They think I'm a savage, a slave playing knight. And they're right, I just swing and hit. No technique, no magic, just muscle. She gritted her teeth, her golden eyes flashing with anger. She picked up the sword again. The slaver masters had beaten the Iron Mountain style into her. It was the only way she knew how to fight. Stance, grip, leverage. Clang. She hit the dummy again. It didn't break. You are fighting yourself, child. A calm voice drifted from the edge of the training field. Leona spun around, her tail swishing instinctively. Standing there, watching her with amused green eyes, was Queen Aelinor. The queen wasn't wearing her royal robes. She was dressed in simple training leathers, holding a wooden staff. Your Majesty, Leona bowed clumsily, almost dropping her sword. At ease, Aelinor waved her hand. She walked closer, circling Leona like a predator inspecting prey. I've been watching you for an hour. You have immense strength. Your muscles are denser than any human, and your reflexes are sharper than any elf. The queen stopped in front of her. So why do you fight like a clumsy human peasant? Leona flinched. I was trained in the pits. The masters taught me. They taught you to be entertaining. Aelinor cut her off. They gave you a sword because humans like to see swords. They gave you armor because humans like knights. They forced you into a box that doesn't fit you. Aelinor reached out and tapped the heavy greatsword in Leona's hand. This piece of metal, it slows you down. It dulls your senses. You are worried about the edge, the weight, the reach. But I need a weapon, Leona argued, her voice tight. I can't fight monsters with my bare hands. I'm not a mage like Isabel or the young lord. You are a lionkin, Elinor said softly. You were born with weapons. She pointed at Leona's hands. Drop the sword. Leona hesitated. The sword was her shield. It was the only thing that made her feel like a warrior and not just a beast. Drop it, Elinor commanded, her voice sharpening. Clang! Leona let the sword fall. Now Elinor stepped back. She raised her staff. Attack me. What? Leona blinked. But I don't have. Attack me. Whoosh! A vine whipped out from Elinor's staff, lashing at Leona's legs. Leona jumped instinctively, her powerful leg muscles launching her 3 meters into the air. Good reflexes, Elinor noted, but you are still thinking like a human. You are looking for a weapon to pick up. Stop thinking. The queen flicked her wrist. The ground beneath Leona erupted. Roots shot up, trying to bind her. Roar, Leona, Elinor shouted. Don't block, don't parry, hunt. Hunt. The word triggered something deep in Leona's blood. She dodged a root. She didn't step. She scrambled on all fours, moving low to the ground. The world shifted. She didn't see opponents anymore. She saw prey. Her heart rate slowed. Her pupils dilated. The mana in the air didn't feel like magic. It felt like scent. There. She sensed Elinor's position not with her eyes, but with the vibration of the earth. Leona lunged. She pouncing with all her might. She covered 20 meters in a single, explosive leap. Instinctively, she reached out with her hands. Snicked. Sharp, curved claws extended from her fingertips. A red, wild, hot, and bloody aura erupted from her skin. It wasn't the refined aura of a knight. It was beast aura. Elinor's eyes widened slightly. She raised a wooden barrier. Slash! Leona's claws tore through the magical wood like it was paper. Boom! She landed, her fist slamming into the ground where the queen had been a split second ago. The impact created a crater 3 times larger than anything she had done with the sword. Dust filled the air. Leona stood up, breathing heavily. Her hands were glowing with red energy. Her nails were now long, razor-sharp talons. Leona looked at her hands, stunned. I cut through the barrier. You tore through it, Elinor corrected, appearing on a nearby tree branch, looking unruffled but pleased. You stopped trying to be a soldier, Leona. You remembered you are a predator. The queen jumped down. That red energy, that is beast aura. It is unique to your kind. It cannot be channeled through cold steel. It must be channeled through your own body, your claws, your fangs, your fists. Leona clenched her fist. The red aura flared, responding to her heartbeat. It felt right. It felt like coming home. I don't need a sword, Leona whispered, a grin spreading across her face. It wasn't a polite smile. It was a feral, toothy grin. I am the sword. Exactly, Elinor nodded. That kid Damien saw this potential in you. That is why he saved you. He doesn't need another knight. He needs a monster. Leona stood up to her full height. The shame of her defeat against Charon vanished, replaced by a burning hunger to test this new power. Thank you, Your Majesty, Leona bowed, but this time she didn't look clumsy. She looked dangerous. Don't thank me, Elinor turned to leave. Just make sure you don't break my training grounds. Repairing them is expensive. As the queen left, Leona turned back to the training dummy, the one she had struggled to scratch earlier. She walked up to it. She didn't take a stance. She just swiped. Crunch! The dummy exploded into splinters. Leona laughed, a deep rumbling sound that shook the leaves. I'm ready, she growled, looking toward the castle where Damien was resting. Next time, I won't be the one getting thrown. 6 months. To the outside world, 6 months was just a changing of seasons. The snow melted, the flowers bloomed, and the wars in the human empire ground to a bloody stalemate. But in the sacred grove of the world tree, 6 months was a lifetime. Under the crushing pressure of the ancient mana density, weak bodies were broken and rebuilt. Naivety was sweated out. Fear was burned away. And today, the training ended. The Sacred Grove Central Clearing. Are you ready, nephew? Queen Aelinor stood in the center of the clearing. She wasn't wearing her royal robes. She wore a simple, tight-fitting combat suit made of woven spider silk. Her hands were empty, but her presence filled the entire forest. She looked at the young man standing opposite her. Damien had changed. At 12.5 years old, he stood 6 feet tall. His baby fat was completely gone, replaced by lean, corded muscle that looked like it was carved from marble. His silver hair was tied back in a high ponytail, revealing a face that had lost its softness. His blue eyes were calm, deep as an ocean. He didn't hold a sword. He didn't wear armor. He just stood there, hands in his pockets. "I've been ready for a month, Auntie," Damien said, his voice deeper than before. "You're the one who kept delaying the test." "Arrogance," Aelinor smirked. "Let's see if you can back it up." She raised a hand. "The rules are the same as the first day. I won't use my domain. I won't use 7th Order spells. I will restrict myself to peak 4th Order physical stats." She pointed a finger at him. "Land one hit on me. A scratch, a bruise, even a touch on my clothes. If you do that, you graduate. If you fail, you stay another 6 months. "Deal," Damien said. Boom. Not casting a spell, he simply kicked off the ground. But this wasn't the clumsy, rocket-like launch from 6 months ago. The ground didn't crack. There was no wasted energy. He simply vanished, moving with such terrifying efficiency that he left an afterimage. Aelinor's eyes widened slightly, fast. She sidestepped. A fist wreathed in golden aura occupied the space where her head had been a millisecond ago. "Too slow," she taunted, grabbing his wrist to throw him. But Damien didn't resist the throw. He pivoted with it. Shadow step. He didn't teleport away. He teleported 2 inches to the left, just enough to slip out of her grip. "Gravity, bind." Isabel's voice rang out from the sidelines. A sudden, heavy pressure slammed onto Aelinor's shoulders. It wasn't enough to stop a 7th Order, but it was enough to make her pause for a fraction of a second. Twang! A silent, invisible arrow hissed past Aelinor's ear, cutting a lock of her hair. Lyra, hidden in the canopy, had fired a phantom arrow without making a sound. "Cheeky," Aelinor laughed, spinning to deflect the arrow with her bare hand. "Using your teammates. I thought this was a duel." "Hey, you never said help wasn't allowed." Damien's voice came from below her. "After all, all's fair in love and war." Yes, for this final battle, Damien had decided to cheat. Just kidding. How could it be possible for him to defeat someone like that? Even if she suppressed her mana, he couldn't beat her in 6 months. Thankfully, hearing him say this, she didn't refute, but steadily looked around. And as if sensing something indeed, a smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. "Huh." Leona burst out of the bushes, roaring, her beast gauntlets glowing red. She slammed the ground, creating a shockwave that forced Aelinor into the air. Aelinor floated, looking down at them. Impressive coordination, but not enough. She waved her hand. Vines shot from the trees, restraining Leona and blocking Isabel's line of sight. "You're wide open, Damien." She dove at him, preparing to flick his forehead and end the match. Damien looked up. He wasn't panicking. He was smiling. 6 months of hell. 6 months of breaking my bones and knitting them back together with life mana. 6 months of surpassing my limits. "System, monitor my vitals," Damien whispered, his eyes turning dangerous. "Overclock. Warning, dual core output at 200%. Physique durability, sufficient." Whoosh. Damien didn't block. He opened his arms. Left side, an abyssal black hole that seemed to devour the light. Right side, a blinding golden sun that burned the air. He slammed his hands together. Dual secret art, eclipse flash. What happened next was a blinding, deafening explosion of pure sensory overload. The light blinded Aelinor's eyes. The shadow blinded her mana sense. For 0.1 seconds, the Queen of Elves was blind. That was all he needed. However, he neither attacked her nor tried to punch her. He simply stepped directly into her personal space. Tap. Aelinor felt a finger touch her forehead. The light faded, the dust settled. Damien was standing in front of her, his finger resting gently between her eyebrows. His chest was heaving, steam rising from his skin as his celestial life physique vented the excess heat. Boop, Damien whispered. Silence filled the clearing. Isabel, Leona, and Lyra held their breath. Aelinor blinked. She looked at Damien's finger. She looked at his exhausted but triumphant smile. Then she laughed, a loud, genuine laugh that sounded like wind chimes. "You little brat," she said, ruffling his hair, messing up his cool ponytail. "You blinded me." "I used the tools available," Damien shrugged, retracting his hand. "You said land a hit. You didn't say I had to fight fair." "Fairness is for corpses," Aelinor nodded, her expression turning proud. "Thuron would be proud. You fight just like him. Dirty, smart, and overwhelmingly flashy." She stepped back and looked at the team. Isabel, whose flames were now a controlled, hungry blue. Lyra, whose presence was almost entirely erased from the mana spectrum. Leona, who stood calmly despite the massive aura she was suppressing. And Damien, the dual-core monster who led them. "You pass," Queen Aelinor announced. "The training is over." She waved her hand, and a floating tray with 4 glasses of nectar appeared. "Drink, tonight we celebrate, tomorrow you leave the forest." Damien took a glass. He looked south, toward the human empire, toward the dwarven mountains, toward the unknown fate of his parents. The playfulness vanished from his eyes, replaced by the cold resolve of the greedy king. "Tomorrow," Damien agreed. "We continue our journey later that night." Time soon passed, and the whole elf empire was in a jovial mood. On the orders of the queen, food and alcohol were declared free throughout the whole land. As for the reason, Aelinor claimed that it was to celebrate their win against Charon. However, the real reason was to give Damien and the others one night of fun before their journey began. Now, amidst all the laughter and cheers in the kingdom, a faint silhouette sat at the foot of He World Tree, a bottle of alcohol in hand, her eyes slightly blurry. "Hey Lyra, what's on your mind? The others are dancing and having fun. Heck, Isabel and Leona are having an eating competition as we speak. I'm sure that's more fun than sitting here alone." Sitting down beside her, Damien had a slight smile on his face as he handed her a plate of food from the palace. "Lyra, in the original novel, you were always one who kept your thoughts in your heart. Desperate for companionship, desperate for validation, however, now that's going to change. But this time, I'm not letting you go down that path full of loneliness and betrayal." Recalling her tragic plot, among all the people he planned to recruit, apart from Isabel, Lyra was the one he paid most attention to. To avoid her going down the wrong path, he was willing to do his best. But Lyra, seeing the uninvited guest, didn't face him. Rather, she just took another swing of her alcohol and spoke into the air. "Hey Voss kid, do you know, right now, even though I've gotten stronger, I feel it's no use. Humans have already started to act and capture us. Our one ally, your father, is gone, and the queen had to sacrifice her lifespan in the last battle. Adding to the elf soldiers sacrificed in the last battle against the undead, we can't stand another fight. The way things are going, we'll either all be enslaved, captured, or destroyed. Could it be the elves are going to end?" Taking a gulp, tears welled in her eyes. Her lips quivered in the moonlight, and her pointed ears drooped slightly. Looking at her like this, Damien didn't know what to say. Everything she said was indeed correct. If something wasn't done, the current elf empire's destruction was only a matter of time. A matter which everyone knew, but silently chose not to mention. Thinking of this, Damien remained silent. "Lyra," he spoke, but words refused to come out of his mouth. For the first time in a long time, he didn't know what to say. "It's all right, kid, no need to push yourself. It's not like you're responsible for any of this. I'm already grateful as it is for helping us as much as you did. If I asked for any more, I wouldn't feel right with myself," said Lyra, trying to take more alcohol. Unfortunately, her bottle was already empty. "All right, it seems like I'm out of alcohol, kid. Go back and have fun with the others. At your age, you should be worrying more about having fun than wars. Let the adults take care of the big things." Standing up unsteadily, she prepared to take her leave. However, her words just now had unknowingly sparked something in Damien. "Lyra, what do you mean by have fun? Do you really expect me to have fun in a situation like this?" Yelling angrily, Damien stood up. "My father and mother are gone. My whole family disappeared, gone poof, all before I could even react. My very existence, wanted by the Empire, and you tell me to let the adults handle it. All the adults I know are gone." Unable to contain his emotions, all the stress he had accumulated over the past 6 months seemed to explode. Despite being a transmigrator, despite having a system, everything seemed to be falling apart. Despite his constant smiles and hardworking appearance, beneath that lay a scared, doubtful appearance filled with doubt. A voice constantly asking, can a villain really be the protagonist? Can an outsider really survive in such a harsh world? With such thoughts and pressure, how dare he be a kid? How dare he have fun? In a moment of excitement, he grabbed Lyra's shoulder and held her close. The moonlight reflected both their shadows, bringing a silver hue to the surroundings. "Lyra, the cause of all this is because we're weak. Even if we got stronger during these 6 months, we're still weak. So we can't even touch the hair of the queen once she uses mana. We're so weak that the humans don't pay any heed to your existence, so they capture your kind with ease." Taking a pause, Damien's breath landed on Lyra's face, making her heart beat slightly faster. "However, we don't always have to be weak. Join me, Leona and Lyra, as we leave the Elf Empire tomorrow. Follow us to get strong, so strong that neither man nor God dare oppose us. Lyra, no one stands in the beginning, not me, not you and not even God, but I promise if you follow me, one day you will stand in the sky." Saying this, Damien did not know if he was talking to her or himself. However, one thing that was for sure was that he was unwilling to give up. Even if everything ended for naught and he lost his life in the process, just like the original Damien, he would at least die fighting. So with this in mind, he brought out a blue gem from his pocket. "Swallow this, Lyra, although this would put you under my command, but it will awaken a new latent ability for you. Just like Isabel, who awakened her demon blood and could easily kill third orders without any practice, this gem can be your first step in getting stronger. However, for that I'll need you to believe in me." Taking a pause, Damien looked deeply into Lyra's eyes. "So let me ask you one more time, Lyra of the Elves, will you believe in me? So let me ask you one more time, Lyra of the Elves, will you believe in me?" Silence. In an instant, silence filled the atmosphere as even the faint sounds of partying at a distance seemed to be drowned away under the tense atmosphere. On one end, Damien, with his hands outstretched, holding the contract gem. On the other end, Lyra stared right at him. "Damien, kid, this isn't the time to joke around. I apologize for saying what I said before, but now isn't the time. Who doesn't know about your family's contract gems? Things with sentience can't consume them, as no living being would fully entrust itself to another. It's why your father only contracted those shadow monsters of his. Also, what's this about awakening abilities? If the contract gem had such an ability, this continent would have long been surnamed Voss. Looking at him in disbelief, Lyra could not believe what she was hearing. As a top family in the Dragon Empire, the capabilities of their signature ability had long been investigated by various forces. In fact, compared to other families with more unique abilities, had it not been for their hereditary shadow abilities and mana, they wouldn't even be considered a viable force, much less as powerful as they are today. So hearing Damien say this, Lyra didn't know what to believe. Although a part of her told her that it wasn't true, another part said the opposite. Plus, whenever she looked at it, there seemed to be something in that gem calling her, tempting her to swallow it so that it will grant her all her needs. Lyra, I'm not joking. Isabel did indeed awaken her abilities thanks to my contract gem. It's also why I can use her abilities too. Reverse gravity. Casting the ability, Damien slowly began to ascend from the ground. During these 6 months, apart from practicing with Eleanor and Alfred, he had also been studying the abilities he gained from Isabel. Thanks to that, simple things like flight and floating could now easily be achieved. Lyra, although we have not met each other long, I need you. The elves need you. Staying here won't be of help to anyone. However, together with all of us, we can make a difference. Giving her one more push, Damien, although calm on the outside, was secretly anxious. In his plans for the future, she was a vital part of his arsenal. If he couldn't convince her here to come with him, then a lot of things would have to change. Fortunately, his worries were for naught as, after hearing him say this, Lyra's eyes tightened with determination. Before he could react, she snatched the gem out of his hand. Kid, if you're lying to me, then expect an arrow in your head tomorrow morning, she said as she swallowed the gem whole. Seeing this, Damien, remembering something, instantly cursed. Shit, I forgot. A scene that made Lyra confused. However, before she could ask him why, the answer soon appeared. Arg, damn, it hurts more than last time. Damn it, kid, if something like this is going to happen, give me a heads up. Growling in pain, they both curled into balls as they held their abdomens, clenched their teeth and tried to stomach the pain. Unfortunately, this wasn't any pain. For Lyra, her soul was being opened up and expanded, her latent ability being forcefully pried up to the surface. And for Damien, it was his soul being torn and grafted with a new ability being imprinted on it. For both, although different, it was paid beyond what words could describe. Fortunately, no one is around, otherwise I won't be able to explain what happened here, Damien thought while clenching his fist in pain. Sadly, his thoughts were wrong, as not long after, they both started rolling on the ground in pain. Alfred and Eleanor walked to where they were. Quite a bit of a problem we have here. It seems my dear elf is going to be snatched away by this Voss kid. Looking at Lyra on the floor, Eleanor had a smile on her face as she spoke. And Alfred beside her, hearing this, nodded in response. Indeed, the young master seems to be quite the charmer, more than the master was during his days. Thinking about the 3 girls who followed him, Alfred wondered what his young master's future would be like. Would he be like the master and have only one wife, or would he marry them all? After all, a lot of strong men in the world are married to more than one wife. Lost in thought, Alfred put his hand on his chin. As for Eleanor, after glancing at the 2 of them for a bit, she silently cast a spell. Would art quick make furniture? In an instant, a wooden bed made out of wood and plants was formed under both of them. At least they wouldn't get injured too much from rolling on the ground. However, Alfred, to think your family's contract gem has such an ability. Could it be that you guys have been hiding it from the world? But how is that possible? You should have long since been discovered, considering how high-profile your patriarch is. Looking again at Lyra on the ground, Aeliner was truly surprised by the sudden turn of events. Just now, they both noticed neither Damien nor Lyra was available at the party, so they decided to search for them, just to see the scene of Damien offering up a gem. Now hearing that it could awaken abilities of the consumer, had it not been that they had to guarantee loyalty to the gem creator, she would have wanted to try it too. That, and he couldn't imagine a queen like herself rolling on the ground in pain. Oh, indeed, this old man was also surprised that the young master's gem could do that. However, he is the young master, so what's there to be surprised? Even if tomorrow he ascends to godhood, this old man would take it for granted. Giving a light chuckle, Alfred brushed off her question. After all, he was just a steward. His duty was to serve, not ask questions. To which Aeliner didn't reply. She just gave him a deep look. All right, let's go back inside. If these two see us when they get their senses back, they'll probably be embarrassed. Also, that Isabel kid might eat up our entire food reserves if I don't stop her soon. Seriously, everyone from your family is such a monster. Walking back to the palace, Aeliner complained slightly. However, looking closer, a smile was at the corner of her lips. Perhaps sometimes, chaos like this wasn't all that bad. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like the video and comment down if anything wrong in the story, and if have any suggestion to a new novel or want next part of any series, comment down.